Hey there, it's Nathalie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. So we're going to do a little stitching 101, or a little slow stitching. If you want to download the pattern for this, you can go to myhallcloset.com. I'll put the link in the description box below. It's going to get us ready to do a couple of little stitch collage pieces. So there's this trend going on right now that's called slow stitching. And so I don't know, you can do this slow or you can do this fast, however you want to. But I'm going to show you some basic embroidery stitches. So I'm going to start off with just some regular embroidery floss. I'm doing about 30 inches, maybe something like that. And it's 6 strands. Don't worry about that spool of thread. That's what the embroidery floss is rolled onto. So this basic running stitch, I'm coming up from the bottom and through to the top. Pull the thread through. Make sure you don't get any loops on that back side, and then just poke it back down through. And then so you can just keep doing that, like the in and out, going to the back, or you can do this in a side to side where you put the needle in and kind of push the fabric up a little bit and catch into that next little spot. And so the advantage to doing it like this, where you insert the needle and then lift the fabric up, is that your stitching is actually going to be a little bit straighter than if you just go in. Even with the pattern marked off, it's still easy to get where it goes kind of wonky-fied like that. And if you're good with wonky, go for it. Yeah, but if you need to have it real straight, then just go side to side like this with that needle poking it through, and so then you get that nice straight trail. So I'm doing like a brick pattern where it's kind of alternating. You don't have to, but this is just a practice thing. And I just thought it might be a little bit more interesting than just stacking them up one right underneath the other. So then once I finish, I'm going to turn this over and I'll tie off my thread because I'm going to change colors. All right. So what I do is I put my needle under the next little loop of fabric, and I'm going to loop of thread, and I'm going to make a loop, a small loop. And then I want to, it's almost going to be kind of like a figure eight. I'm going to put my needle into that loop and then do a little twist, suck that fabric, that thread down tight so it doesn't have a chance to tangle up on you, because it really likes to tangle. So anyway, now clip that off and we're ready to move on to the next one. And the next one is going to be cross stitch. And that is a pretty basic classic stitch. And there's not really a right or wrong way to do this, but what I like to do is go from the top to the bottom and then scooch over and go from the bottom to the top. And I try to do that consistently, going all the way across. So what that's going to do is that it's going to put that second stitch laying over the top. And if I go the same direction each time, then that second stitch is going to go over the top. So top to bottom, then scooch over and then go from bottom left to top right. Oh, I know, that means you got to know your right from your left. The other right. Oh wait, no, stop. Okay, so now we're going from top down to the bottom, scooch over. Now this little stitch is really popular, like back in the day, retro stitching for like on ginghams, all kinds of decorative patterns worked in cross stitch on gingham little dresses and hems and stuff. So we'll go to this, do the same thing, flip to the back. I'm not going to tie off every one. I mean, I am, but I'm not going to show you every one. Anyway, so make that little loop stitch and then tie that off and clip it off. Our next stitch is a blanket stitch, and we're going to work this one from left to right, but you don't have to. So I'm going to come up in the top corner on the left hand side, and then I'm going to scoot over just about maybe a quarter of an inch, something like that, and pick that fabric up and then loop that thread behind the needle. And then just as you swing on across, grab hold of that thread with your thumb. And the thing with these stitches is you're using these for like edges or applique, is the same, it's being consistent, the same width apart and the same depth. So again, pick that piece of fabric up with your needle and put that thread behind the needle and then pull up. Just work that all the way across. It really is just a really pretty decorative stitch. Now, as I get to the end, what I'm going to do to finish this off is I'm going to put one little stitch catching that upper corner, work back down through the back, right there, and then pull that through. Now, if you wanted to, you just ran out of thread and you want to continue, then you would get you another piece of thread, make your knot, and you would come up in that same place where you just came out of, so that you have that next stitch continuing. All right, moving on to the stem stitch. And this is just a straight stitch with almost kind of a little bit of a back stitch. So I'm going to come up, I've got a different color thread, and then go down. It's probably maybe about a quarter of an inch, something like that. And don't come up in the same place where you just went down, but just a little above the area where you just put that needle back down into the fabric. So poke through, and then I try to work it like on this one. I'm working the stitch towards the bottom, and so I try to do that all the way across, but you don't, I mean all the way the length of that. We're just laced to the bottom, and it's just a little tiny ooch of back into that stitch, but you're not stitching back into the thread. You're just coming up beside that thread. Almost to the end of this, and I almost did not have enough thread in my needle, but it's really easy, you know, with the embroidery. You can stop, knot it off, and then start over. So this one is a satin stitch, and I'm going to use variegated thread. Normally I would work that top to bottom, but I want to be sure and show you how to get it going straight. So I'm going to start in the middle so I get a good straight line across. And because it's variegated thread, whenever I go to finish the circle, there'll be a little shift in the color, but that's okay. So you're going to come back up, you're going to work on the left to right, come back up on the left side, and just a tiny bit above the thread, the stitch that you just did, I mean, it's just about a thread width, because you really want those stitches very close together. Now the other thing about a satin stitch is that it's really easy to put too much pressure on the stitch and wind up pulling your fabric and making a pucker in your fabric. If you're working in a hoop, it's a little easier to control that, that puckering. But just don't pull it too tight. That's the main thing. And so now we're almost to the top of this. Okay, almost to the top of this, and then I'm going to flip it over so that you can see the back side of it, which is nice and smooth. Here we go, one more stitch there. Now I'm going to go to the back side so you can see. And then I'm going to start over again on the left side, coming across, and you can see where that, because I didn't use a solid color purple thread, you can see where that color shift is with that variegated thread. But I wanted to make sure that these stitches went straight, and so when you're practicing this, you know, rather than starting at the top, you can start at the top if you want to, and then work down. But anyway, so this is a satin stitch, and just be sure you don't pull your fabric too tight, because it could actually pucker on you, and you don't want it to pucker on you. So our next stitches are going to be the lazy daisy stitches, and so they're going to work from the inside of the flower to the outside. And I'm just going to show you 3 stitches. So you're going to come right back in where you just took that needle out. You can go right in the same hole, or you can scooch over just a little bit, and it doesn't matter whether you do it to the right or to the left. It doesn't really matter. And then, like you did the blanket stitch, loop that thread under your needle, and then you are going to pull that up, not too tight, don't pull it too tight, and then poke right down at the top of that loop so it secures that little daisy petal in place. And then it doesn't matter whether you go right to left on this, you know, working around the flower. So I'm just going to go to the left side, not for any good reason, back into that same place that where I just put that needle in, loop that thread underneath. Now I'm moving that needle so I've got enough of the needle exposed that I can catch that little loop. Pull that through, little snug, but not too tight. Don't get it too tight. And then back, down, pulling back to the back again. And that holds that little petal. We're almost to the end of this flower. I'm not sure how many petals I put in there. Looks like maybe 8. I don't know. Anyway, so we'll be using that daisy stitch on another thing. It's going to be similar to that, but that's a little daisy stitch, lazy daisy. Cute. That's just too cute. Okay, I'm going to tie that off, and then we're going to go to the chain stitch. Now this is almost like the lazy daisy that we just did. We'll loop around. We're going to do almost the same thing, loop around, and then right back into where you started, and then pull that thread underneath the needle, loop. Now this time when you're going to go back into where you just came out of, right there. You're not going to make that little loop at the top, stitch at the top. You're going to go right back in where you just were, push that needle through, pull that loop up, catch it with your thumb, loop back around, go back into that same spot that you just came out of. And this is called a chain stitch. And so you can use this for edging, or you can use it for a stem, or just whatever kind of decorative thing you want to do with it. And you can, I've got this one running straight, but you can curve these, you know, if they could follow the same kind of pattern as that stem stitch did. And again, these are just basic stitches, get you practicing. All right, so now let's do French knots. So they're a little bit trickier, but not bad. So pull up, then hold your needle flat and wrap 3 loops around. Don't get them too tight. If you pull them too tight, then you're not going to be able to push that needle back through to the back of the fabric. And so you're going just like 1 thread over. You want to make sure that you don't pull that knot back through your fabric. If your fabric's too loose, it might pull all the way through. So come up, lay your needle flat against your fabric, 3 loops, 3 loops, and then back down in. And you can see I just scooched just the tiniest bit away from that original entry point. Push that through, and I'm holding my thread so it doesn't tangle on me, because it tangles really easily. I'm sorry that I got out of frame there. Let's see if I can get back in. And then you can also do this with 1 loop or 2 loops, and later I will show you how to do a bullion, and that's when you put a whole bunches of loops, but that's for other video. This little cluster on the pattern gives you quite a few French knots and gives you a good chance to practice. And so now I'm almost out of thread here, so, and you can see it's pretty short, so I'm going to go ahead and tie that off and get me another little length of thread to do the middle on our daisy. So I guess I was just showing you that I had cut that off. I don't know why I flipped it to the back, but anyway, so I'm going to do 3 little French knots in the middle of the daisy. Same thing, lay the needle over, wrap, do 3 of them, and then poke it back down through. And then sometimes when you're doing these, your thread gets like really twisted, so just like pull it back out and get those kinks out of there, and then go again. 1 more, and we'll have that little flower going. I'm not sure what's in the air here that's making my throat so dry and raspy. I know that I would like to think that spring is in the air, but who knows? Who knows? It's Texas. Okay, so now we're going to do a stem stitch. We've got a different shade of green to do the stem stitch going down this little, underneath this little flower. So we're going to curve it just a little bit, and I'm just running those threads right next to each other, just like we did on the stem stitch. And then we're going to do a couple of little leaves. And they are, I'm just going to tell you ahead of time, they're like the lazy daisy, except opposite, because that's just the way that the leaf would be shaped. So instead of starting our loop at the at the stem and then working out to the point. We're going to start at the point and then work that little rounded part back towards the stem. And that's going to give us a little pointy leaf with a little rounded bottom towards the stem, which is the way that leaves would sort of kind of, well, yeah, they would sort of kind of be shaped. Anyway, I think it's a little bit sweeter this way. And so I'm going to do one more little stitch on that. Again, I'm out of frame. I'm trying to pay attention, get close enough for y'all to see. Anyway, I just want to tell you thank you for watching and participating and liking and sharing me with your friends. I think that I'm going to enjoy this. It's been a long time since I've done some embroidery, but I love everything creative, all of the stitching stuff and making stuff. And I'm just so excited that y'all come along on these creative journeys with me. I love your sweet comments. And so, you know the drill. Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad that you hung out for a while. Be sure you give me a little thumbs up, subscribe, share me with your friends. There's my thumbs up. And I'll see you next time. Bye.